Is your bank selling you out to the FBI? They might be. If you were a Bank of America customer who used a debit or a credit card in or near Washington, D.C. on January 5th, 6th, or 7th, it turns out your bank may have gobbled up your financial records and given them over to the feds. Now, Jim Jordan and the Judiciary Committee in Congress, they want answers from the Bank of America. They sent a letter over to them demanding to know why they just gobbled up this information and sent it to the FBI. But we learned more about this from a hearing with Mr. Bishop in Congress. Here's what it sounded like.
I think Americans need to hear it because there are other glimpses of just how the victimization is going on and how it's victimization at scale. This is one fact that struck me. The Bank of America record, the story that Bank of America turned over the credit card transactions, whether for an aircraft or a lodging or the purchase of a cup of coffee, for everyone who decided to come to Washington, to be in Washington area, the Northern Virginia area. That's one of the things that you asked questions about. There are victims all over the place. All of the people who suffered when the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security got involved in censorship with social media platforms, millions and millions of tweets and narratives being taken down. That is victimization at scale. It must be resolved. And the fact that those who profess to be most concerned about victimization of people by law enforcement in this country join in the victimization of you. I think that's the takeaway, at least for me, from this hearing. And
records from your banks and all sorts of other data assembled by the federal government, some of it done without warrants, some of it done without probable cause, some of it, though, voluntarily just given up by the big corporations like Bank of America. Thomas Massie also brought this up. Here's what he had to say about it.
Americans are upset and they are angry that the government's been weaponized against them. But I think they're better served if we remain dispassionate in reviewing this evidence. But I have to admit, I came here today trying to be dispassionate, but I'm feeling emotion. I'm feeling disgust. Before us, among these witnesses, is represented decades of exemplary service in the military, in the FBI, service to our country for which your families have sacrificed, for which you have sacrificed to give this service. And now the other side of the aisle just wants to disparage you for bringing forth facts that the American people need to know, that we need to know if we're going to change these whistleblower laws so that you're not punished for bringing us the truth. This is our we've had 4 hearings, and I'm noticing a disturbing trend here. Big business is working with the government to weaponize against the American people. And, you know, the government says, well, this is okay because we're not violating the Constitution.
Outsourced.
The big business is doing this voluntarily, and we saw this with social media companies.
Voluntarily.
But I want to play testimony from a whistleblower who's not here with us today. If you could cue that up about how we've seen, in this instance, one of the biggest corporations in America working with the FBI to violate civil liberties.
Voluntarily just give it over.
I believe it
no
was
pressure.
Either on January 7th or Bank of America with no directive from the FBI data mined its customer.
What?
And data mined a date range of 5 to 7.
Not even on the 6th.
Any BOA who used a BOA product, and by BOA product, a debit card, they compiled that list, and then on top of that list, they put anyone who had purchased a firearm during any date.
I find that testimony chilling. That was the retired FBI supervisory intelligence analyst, George Hill, who gave us that testimony. And what he said there is that Bank of America compiled a list of everybody who used a credit card or a debit card between January 5th and January 7th inside of Washington, D.C., and gave that to the FBI. But before they did, they looked at anybody who had ever purchased a firearm, according to their records, and elevated those people to the top of the list.
There weren't any firearms on January 6th.
And they didn't geofence it to Washington, D.C. You could have, as Mr. Hill testified, you could have bought a gun in 1999 in Iowa with a Bank of America card. And then you got heightened attention, and it was given to the FBI. Now, whether the FBI asked for this or whether they did this voluntarily is very chilling, because Bank of America, you know, they've got a lot of issues in front of the government. And this is where you get into this unhealthy feedback loop. Bank of America spent $250,000 lobbying us on the American Rescue Plan, issues related to Paycheck Protection Program, general issues related to data security, and general issues related to interchange, and general issues related to privacy. The irony of it. Bank of America is violating your privacy, working hand in glove with the FBI. The FBI will say, we didn't ask for this, they just gave it to us. It doesn't matter. It's a violation when you get to this level of cooperation. Now, I want to turn to something else that's troubling me very much. The whistleblowers here before us today have described incentive-based payments related to increasing the number of criminal investigations. Mr. Friend and Mr. Allen, you've talked about this. Mr. Friend, can you tell us what that's about and why that might be unhealthy?
It's extremely unhealthy. It's called integrated program management. It's a process that the FBI uses annually to essentially establish arbitrary metrics for itself to achieve as far as opening up a certain number of cases and using certain tools and getting certain accomplishments.
White supremacist cases.
This, in football terms, this sounds eerily similar to the Saints bounty gate. If folks remember that. And that scandal, coaches would pay players cash bonuses for hits that would result in injuries to other players. Players would receive additional pay if their tackle resulted in an opposing player being taken out of the game. These non-contract bonuses were part of an underground culture that incentivized dirty behavior. When the activity was exposed, the Saints organization was widely condemned. The defensive coach was initially suspended indefinitely, and the head coach was suspended for an entire season. Somebody at the FBI needs to be suspended.
Yes.
For the dirty tactics that they've used. If we recognize it in sports, it's not hard to recognize it here in government. And I yield back to balance my time.
Exactly right. The FBI putting pressure on private companies. We saw it on full display with the Twitter files. We know that they do this. They say we're not violating the Constitution because it's being outsourced to third-party companies like Facebook, like Google. They're doing the censoring. It's not us. They're the ones giving us the information. We're not taking it in a warrantless fashion without probable cause or due process. So it's disgusting behavior. We know that it's not without pressure from the government when the FBI comes knocking, or when you have any interaction with them or interfacing with them. You know that they're developing a relationship with these companies to get this data, and that these relationships go way deeper than they should. It's all been on display for us to see. And now whistleblowers are communicating that it's happening to Congress as well. So Jim Jordan wants answers about this. He sent this letter along with others, including Thomas Massie, who we just heard from, to the head of Bank of America, CEO named Brian Moynihan. This letter got sent May 25th from Jim Jordan, Ohio chairman. He says, "Dear Mr. CEO of Bank of America, the Committee on the Judiciary and the Select Subcommittee of Weaponization are conducting oversight of the FBI and in its receipt of information about American citizens from private entities." Why is the FBI getting documents from private companies? An FBI whistleblower has disclosed that shortly after the events of the Capitol on January 6, B of A provided the FBI voluntarily and without any legal process with a list of individuals who had made transactions in DC, the metro area, with a Bank of America credit or debit card between Jan 5, Jan 6, Jan 7. The committee and the Select Subcommittee have also heard testimony about individuals who had previously purchased a firearm with a Bank of America product, were elevated to the top of the list, regardless of when or where the purchase was made. We require your cooperation in investigating these facts. In a transcribed interview, retired FBI Supervisory Intelligence Analyst George Hill testified that the Bank of America, with no directive from the FBI, data mined its customer base, and they data mined a date range of 5 to 7 January. Any Bank of America customer, any product, I mean any debit card, any credit card, they compiled the list. And then on top of that list, they put anyone who had also purchased a firearm during that date. So he says it was a huge list, as you can imagine. No kidding. Hill also testified that the list that Bank of America provided lists target transactions in DC and the surrounding area. For those customers who made a firearms purchase with a Bank of America product, Hill testified that there was no geographic framework, okay? There was no date range, no geographic frame. They don't care where you were. It wasn't about January 6th. There was no date range. It wasn't about January 6th, not at the Capitol, not in time. They just had an excuse to go get everybody's name who bought a firearm and just give it over to the FBI. Here you go. What's this for? FBI agents are going, this is crazy. What's all this? Why are you bringing all these boxes of names in of Americans who bought guns? They said, oh, January 6th, we thought you might need these. I don't know. Do you want them? FBI's like, yeah, oh yeah, we want them. Sure, yeah. Put them over there next to the other documents that we got from Google. Mr. Hill's testimony was corroborated by the testimony of his former supervisor, another person, special agent in charge named Joseph Bonavolonta, who testified that Boston's Joint Terrorism Task Force brought the Bank of America data to his attention. He testified, he said, a lead had been sent to our office from a unit within the FBI headquarters. It fell under the Office of the Private Sector. In the body of the lead, there was information that provided by Bank of America following a certain number of criteria that in essence aggregated a list of individuals that were supposedly living in the New England area who either had potentially made certain credit card purchases for hotel reservations or plane tickets, or potential purchases at certain gun stores in and around January 6th or planned for the inauguration date. Another big list. Moreover, Mr. Bonavolonta confirmed that the following, quote, one of the list criterias in terms of Bank of America's data was related to whether they had been made purchases at gun shops or, stores that would sell firearms. He stated that Bank of America customer data was also sent to other FBI field offices across the country, specifically in Springfield, Illinois. Congress says this testimony is alarming. According to veteran FBI employees, Bank of America provided without any legal process private financial information of Americans to the most powerful law enforcement entity in the country. This information appears to have had no individualized nexus to particularized criminal conduct, but rather it was a data dump of Bank of America customers' transactions over a 3-day period. This information undoubtedly included private details about Bank of America customers who had nothing at all to do with the events of January 6th, clearly. Even worse, Bank of America specifically provided information about Americans who exercised their Second Amendment right to purchase a firearm. And so Congress has an important interest in ensuring that Americans' private information is protected against collection by federal agencies without due process. The committee and the subcommittee must understand how and to what extent financial institutions like yours, Bank of America, how you worked with the FBI to collect Americans' data. And so we want the following information from you. All information between Bank of America employees and the FBI about this operation. All documents, including with consultants relating to financial records. All documents concerning the use of your products with FBI agent officials, with DOJ officials, FBI officials, and anything that you sent and any communications related to any internal database of firearms purchases, which is just insane. Basically, they produced a list of everybody who owned a firearm and gave it to the FBI, is what it sounds like. No date range, no geographic limits on it, just a list of firearm owners now in possession of the FBI. And the question will be, what is the FBI doing with that list? And why are they allowed to retain that list? Please produce all documents by June 8th. This letter serves as a formal preservation request. Don't destroy anything. We are with Congress. We have the rights under House rules to investigate you. That's what we're doing. If you have any questions about it, let us know. Your friends, Jim Jordan, Thomas Massie, United States Congress. So, another disgusting breach of American privacy rights by not only our government, but by Bank of America and these so-called private, not government-run organizations. And it's incredibly disgusting. Not only is Bank of America breaching their customers' trusts and their financial privacy rights, but the FBI is accepting them because they have no shame either. They will just say, yeah, bring them in. No, we love that. Thanks. Anything else you want to give us? Anything? We'll take everything. We're the corrupt FBI. Rather than them saying, no, wait a minute. Don't we have a duty to protect the privacy rights of Americans? Don't we stand up for the Constitution at the FBI? Aren't we supposed to be serving and protecting the public, not accepting corporations and their corrupt partisan hacks who are in there developing lists of American gun owners? Protecting the Second Amendment, not undermining it, is what the FBI should be doing, but they don't. Fortunately, Congress is asking some questions. We'll see what they get from the FBI.